All right, Coach, opening statements for the college draft.
Yeah, it's really an exciting day. It's, to be back the second time around. I feel like I'm not, swimming in the ocean. But it's just a great day. It's amazing to be a part of this thing and really excited about the future. Hopefully we can take those 6 one-goal losses and turn them around this year. So excited about people we can add and the fact that we have a training camp without a game at the end of the first week, which at first I didn't like, but now I really like because our training camp will be as competitive as ever.
Coach, we all saw the funeral quote about the trades up to the number 1 pick. How many teams have reached out to you, and what have those calls been like? And have you entertained any trade offers?
Well, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that if I did entertain them, it was short-lived, and so, we had a few. Everybody wants to better their team, and rightfully so. And, when you come in last place, people think that you have a lot of needs or a lot of gaps in your roster, which I don't feel we do. I take total blame for what happened last year. I tried to not be myself. I tried to, acquiesce to the feelings of too many people. And now I think it's second time around. I've had a full year to meet with our players, many individual meetings, many Zoom calls, and I think we're ready to roll.
Coach, obviously everyone is fixated on that number 1 pick, but you guys also have a ton of other picks, including 2 more in the top 15. What is kind of the approach, learning from what you went through last year at the draft? How much more prepared, and kind of dialed into the draft are you this year as opposed to last year? And what are some things you learned from last year that you'll take into tonight?
Well, it's a great question. It's complex, to be honest with you. Last year, we knew Jack Hanna was going to miss the first 4 or 5 games. I just wasn't sure what our needs were. As I mentioned, the team is a bunch of great guys. So in those individual meetings, it was basically keep us together and we'll be okay. I think one of the overriding factors last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, is that the Waterdogs always started slow. And so there was no panic in anybody's mind except for mine. And so, just going in, I think it's just knowing what our needs are. When you talk about draft, we went through it last couple of weeks ago or last week with the NFL draft. You have this decision to make when the time comes. Do you fill your needs or do you take the best available player? And certainly, we feel like with 9, 15, 25, some of those picks that we're going to have to take the best available player, even though we have some specific needs.
Coach, a guy you drafted last year, Kenny Brower, wasn't able to play for you last summer because of injury. You expecting him kind of back? Are you expecting his return to impact maybe the way you draft this year at all, or how are kind of guys maybe rejoining this club changing the way you approach the draft?
Yeah, absolutely. Kenny. I took him in the second round for a reason. He is ready to roll. He's 1,000% healthy. He's exactly what we hoped he would be. Obviously, he'll be a little bit, needs to get in game shape, but all the guys are working out with. One of the beauties of this league is that guys get together with each other, even though they play on other teams. It doesn't matter, and so Kenny's ready to roll. He's a leader. He can cover. He's got a good stick, and he can direct traffic, and so we're really excited about that position. And with the experience coming back and the couple of new guys we have there, doesn't become a high priority for us. It's having Kenny is almost like another draft choice. And certainly when we took him, we didn't know he wasn't going to be playing with it for us. But as I mentioned earlier, Jack Hanna was out for over half the season. We had some injuries. Chris Sabia got hurt in the first game. Liam Burns got hurt later on. So, with the growth, it forced Marcus Hudgens into the lineup, and he was fabulous. I've added Jack DiBenedetto off, who I know and I know well. And I know that he's another, like Kenny, he's another coach on the field. And so I think we're going to be really good at that close defensive spot.
Coach, when it comes to the attackman, number one overall that everyone is tying you to, have you heard any feedback or gotten any comments from current players like Sowers or Kieran McCardle about who they want to play with, and do you factor that in at all?
Well, thankfully, the answer to who I want and who they want is the same person. So this is a no-brainer. It's not like last year where you had a little bit of the Schellenberger, O'Neill, who's better fit, and all that stuff. So, when we had Zed, before Zed got hurt, it was a little bit of a, you have four, and so what do you do with one? And so that was a little bit of some discussions with who's going to run out of the box each quarter, because you weren't going to keep any of them happy. But now that, with Zed being hurt, and by the way, that, I talk to Zed every week. He is one of the most wonderful men I've ever met, and he's all in with this team, and he's on the way to a recovery.
Coach, obviously you mentioned there's not many holes on this team to begin with going into the draft, but as you and your staff have gone on, scouting and everything for players that you want to add to this team, what have you guys kind of looked for in terms of competitiveness? And like you mentioned, training camp going to be as competitive as ever with that week one bye. What are some attributes in some of these draft picks that you're looking at that you guys have kind of put together to see how they'll fit in with the competitive nature of this Waterdogs team?
It's everything, in this league, everybody's pretty equal. And so culture, care, love, team, being great teammates. One of the problems that we have each week as GM coaches is that not only have you cut your team from this year 29 to 25, but now you're cutting it from 25 to 19 every week. And those are some really tough discussions every week. And so you got to get guys to understand that it's pro sports and it's the way it is, to be ready and kind of go from there. That's the hard part when it comes to the other stuff. It's lacrosse, and the field being smaller makes you think of other things. And as I said, the draft being one of, we don't have a lot of needs, but our biggest need is to get better. And so whether it's the competitiveness from the training camp, or it's drafting someone who's a little younger, or, we have a salary cap. You have to concern yourself with that. And so there's other things to think about. No practice time. What are they doing? Are they working on Wall Street from 6 in the morning to 8 at night, or are they lifetime lacrosse players? So there's so many factors to take in when you build the team. But ultimately, it's culture, it's caring, and it's really being a great teammate.